I never thought I would become the main character in one of those unbelievable HOA horror stories you read online. I always rolled my eyes when people on Reddit would talk about Karen neighbors and toxic homeowners associations, thinking surely those tales were exaggerated for drama. But then I found myself in the middle of one of the worst experiences of my life, an experience that not only put my asthmatic son's life in danger, but also exposed the true ugliness of people who think power over others is more important than human decency. This is the story of how our HOA president, let's call her Karen because honestly that name fits her perfectly, decided to play God with my family, and how karma eventually delivered justice in a way so satisfying that I still smile when I think about it. We moved into the neighborhood a few years ago because it looked quiet, safe, and ideal for raising kids. The lawns were neatly trimmed, the houses had a charming uniformity, and at first glance the HOA seemed like a good thing. They promised to maintain community standards and keep the neighborhood looking nice. What I didn't know then was that the HOA was less about standards and more about control, especially when the woman in charge, Karen, decided she didn't like you. From the very beginning, Karen had an energy about her that made me uneasy. She always walked around with a clipboard tucked under her arm, as if she was a teacher ready to mark you down for infractions. Her voice carried through the street even when she wasn't yelling, and she had this permanent expression that made it clear she thought she was smarter and better than everyone else. People didn't really talk back to her. Some neighbors avoided her completely, while others just smiled and nodded, like they were afraid of being on her bad side. I didn't get it at first. I thought, how bad could she be? I learned quickly. The first incident happened not long after we moved in. I parked my car slightly too close to the curb while unloading groceries. Within 20 minutes, Karen was at my door with a warning slip. "Cars must be parked fully within the driveway," she lectured as if I had committed a crime instead of just leaving my car halfway out while juggling bags. I apologized politely, but inside, I felt a sting of irritation. It was such a small thing. But Karen thrived on these moments. She wanted to show me that she was watching. That was the beginning of her crusade against me. For months, little notices kept appearing. My grass was half an inch too long. My recycling bin was visible from the street. Once, she even complained about my wind chimes being too loud when the breeze picked up. It was exhausting, but I tried to keep my head down. My husband told me to just ignore her. "She'll get bored eventually," he said. But Karen never got bored. She got worse. The real breaking point came the day my son had one of the scariest asthma attacks of his life. My son is 9 years old, and he's had asthma since he was 3. We've had to rush him to the ER multiple times over the years, and we're always careful about keeping his environment safe. No harsh chemicals, no cigarette smoke, no lingering fumes in the house. That's why what Karen did still makes me shake with anger when I think about it. It started on a Saturday afternoon. I'd gone grocery shopping and my son was helping me carry bags in from the car. I told him to wait in the garage for just a minute while I grabbed the rest. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem. Our garage is ventilated and he likes hanging around there with his basketball or scooter. But when I came back, I noticed something strange. The air smelled sharp, chemical, almost like turpentine. I thought maybe a neighbor was painting. But as I stepped further inside, I realized the fumes were coming from inside our garage. That's when I saw it. Several open cans of paint stacked in the corner, some half empty, some still strong enough that the odor made my eyes water. And there was my son, sitting on the steps, clutching his chest and wheezing. His inhaler was in his pocket, but he looked pale, panicked, and on the verge of tears. My heart stopped. I rushed to him, pulling him out of the garage into fresh air. He gasped, trying to catch his breath, every wheeze stabbing at me like knives. I shouted for my husband to call 911, and then I saw Karen standing a few feet away, arms crossed, watching like it was no big deal. "You really should keep your garage organized," she said with that smug smile of hers. I couldn't believe it. My child was struggling to breathe, and she was scolding me as if this was my fault. Through the chaos in my mind, I pieced it together. Karen had ordered maintenance workers from the HOA to store leftover paint in my garage after they had finished a project on common property, without notifying us, without asking permission, without even sealing the cans properly. "Are you insane?" I shouted at her. "My son has asthma." She just shrugged. "Rules are rules. Homeowners need to provide storage space for community supplies when requested." That was it. No apology, no concern. Just her rules, her authority, her twisted sense of power. I wanted to rip into her, but at that moment, all I cared about was my son. When the EMTs arrived, they rushed over with oxygen and immediately started working on him. One of them asked about the source of the fumes, and I pointed to the garage. He frowned, then walked inside and came back shaking his head. "This air quality is dangerous," he told us. "Whoever left those cans open violated multiple safety codes." I swear, for the first time, Karen's smug look faltered. The EMTs didn't care about her position or her HOA authority. They saw what it was: negligence. They gave me a full report on the spot, documenting the toxic levels and how it endangered my child. They even told me to keep the garage sealed until hazardous waste services could remove everything safely. I felt a spark of hope. Maybe finally, Karen had gone too far. What happened next was like watching karma unfold in slow motion. I filed an official complaint with the HOA board and attached the EMT report. Several other neighbors who had been silent until now suddenly came forward with their own grievances. Stories poured out. How Karen fined a retired veteran for having a flagpole that was too tall. How she harassed a single mom for letting her kids draw chalk art on the sidewalk. How she threatened fines over Halloween decorations. It was like the floodgates opened, and the truth about her reign of terror spilled into the open. The HOA board tried to defend her at first, but the EMT report made it impossible. They were facing legal liability. State safety codes had been broken, and they knew it. Fines started rolling in from the city after an inspector confirmed the violations. And, best of all, Karen was forced to resign from her position. One day she was the queen of the neighborhood, strutting around with her clipboard, and the next she was humiliated, stripped of her power and despised by nearly everyone. I'll never forget the look on her face the day it all came crashing down. Gone was the smug superiority. She looked small, cornered, and furious that her empire had crumbled. And I felt relief. Not just for my son's safety, but because justice had finally caught up with her. It wasn't just revenge, it was accountability. Looking back, I realize how many people let themselves be silenced because they thought they had no choice. Karen thrived on intimidation, on making others feel powerless. But the truth is, bullies like her always trip over their own arrogance eventually. All it takes is one moment where they go too far, one moment where their cruelty leaves undeniable evidence. And when that happens, karma doesn't just tap them on the shoulder, it knocks them flat. My son is doing fine now. He still talks about that day sometimes, but we frame it as the moment when he learned that even the worst people can escape consequences forever. As for me, I still live in this neighborhood, but now it's quieter, better. People smile more. The shadow Karen cast over the community is lifted, and I think we're all breathing easier, literally and figuratively. So if you've ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA president, a tyrannical neighbor, or a so-called Karen who thinks rules are more important than lives, take it from me. Justice might not come instantly, but when it arrives, it's worth every second of the wait. And nothing tastes sweeter than watching karma finally put a bully in their place.